Hello and welcome to this week's design challenge on Mozart's Don Giovanni. The wonderful thing about Don Giovanni is he can imagine all sorts of different worlds around him. He has a wild imagination. He can make things change and get people to really like him. And it's set in the decadent and elegant art world. And here's a picture of Garsington Opera's set design. Can you see that? It's really beautiful. There's a wide shot there. We're going to be exploring that. Now, the thing about Don Giovanni, which is not so great, is he does never think of the consequences of his actions, which is a little bit of a shame. So, for this week's design challenge, here are the resources that you're going to need. You'll need a newspaper, a cardboard box, some A4 paper, kitchen roll, tin foil, a kebab skewer, some scissors, tape, some paint, recycled plastic containers, are you spotting all those things? A yoghurt pot lid, paintbrushes, and some water. And in Garsington Opera's production, the singers had to do live painting on stage. How cool is that? Can you imagine singing and painting at the same time? Quite a lot of talent there. And Rhiannon is here with us today, Rhiannon Newman Brown, and she's going to let us know what our design challenge is inspired by this production.
Hi Karen, yes, I'm really excited by this design challenge. We are going to have as much fun as those singers did on stage. We are going to create our own action paintings this week in this design challenge. And I've got a couple of photographs. The first one here, you can see this amazing black, sort of almost like handprints. You can see how they've used like their whole body to create this kind of mad painting as part of the action. And we've got another photograph here. So here are two characters in the foreground there who are looking very concerned because Don Giovanni has been up to his normal mischief. And in the background there, you can see again this kind of really dynamic kind of paint splattering. And so this reminded me of a very famous painter and inspired our design challenge this week. Now this painter, some of you may have heard of him. He is called Jackson Pollock, and he became very famous for creating something called action painting. And I've got an image here of Jackson Pollock doing his action painting. So look, this is one of the reasons why I'm standing up today and not sitting in my chair, because we're going to need our full bodies to do this week's design challenge. And here he is splattering paint on a canvas, looking very dynamic. And the next picture I can show you is of one of his finished paintings. And so this is called abstract impressionism or abstract art. And what I love is it's just got so much energy in it, which is just brilliant. And this is what we are going to do today. You can see here on my desk all the resources that we just talked through. So very importantly, put some newspaper down first. But in order to try and contain this action painting, we're going to use a cardboard box. Now, if I open this up, you can see I've been practicing. Already there are some splashes of paint in there. So first thing to do is get your cardboard box on your newspaper. I'm going to pull up my sleeves and get some tape. It could be sellotape or masking tape. I have masking tape to hand. And what I want you to do is tape up the sides of the box so that we're making a kind of deep, we're making the box as deep as possible to contain as many splattery splashes as we can. I'm being very brave. I'm not wearing an apron or anything. So, and I have all my computer equipment right in front of me. So I must mean business that we are going to contain this mess. Now, one more thing I would recommend is just go to your corners and just get a little bit of tape on the corners, because the paint could seep out of the corners. But if it does, don't panic, because it will go onto the newspaper. So there we go. I'll just do those two by way of example. Now, we're going to then take a piece of A4 paper and we're going to pop it into the box, just like that. Now your box might be bigger, which is perfectly fine because it'll just give you more space. But ideally find a box that you can put at least an A4 piece of paper in, because then that'll just give you enough room to really go for it. Now we are going to prep our paint next. So this is where your sort of yogurt pots are going to come in handy. And I've also just got another kind of recycled, from my recycling bin, another kind of container, just because that's handy for putting your paintbrushes in and things, just to try and contain the mess. So what you're going to do, now I've got here, this is actually like real kiddie paint. This was, I bought this for my little son to play with, but it's quite good because it's quite liquid. So I'm going to just put a little drop in there. I'm going to do some blue, some green. Let's have some red. There's lots of red in the production of Don Giovanni. So I'm just not having to put in too much, because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some water. So I'm just putting a little dribble in there, a little bit more, because in order for the paint to kind of flick and splatter, we need it to be quite thin. So I've got a little bit of paint in there, and I'm just going to put in a sort of cupful, like a little, like almost like a sort of lid full of paint, of water, sorry, just to water it down a tiny bit. There we go. And this is where your paintbrushes come in handy, because you can now take a paintbrush and just mix up that watery paint. And we're getting in very close to the fun bit. So there we go. Our paint is ready. And one more little stir there. So we are going to make our own splatter paintbrush. Have a dig around in the recycling. I found a yogurt pot lid, but you can find maybe any other kind of plastic bit of recycling. And just be careful, it's something you want that you can cut reasonably easily. It's quite hard, for example, to just cut into a milk bottle. So maybe try and find something that's got a bit of an edge like this that you can cut into. So I'm going to chop off the edges so that I end up with a sort of flat plastic of the inside, just like that. So we've just cut off the ridgy outside bit. And then I'm going to cut this into 3 pieces, like that. Now, if I put 2 of those down, what I want you to do is then almost, you're cutting individual little brushes, like like little bits of paintbrush. I hope you can see that. So you're going to do that on each of these. So you want to just cut maybe just an inch up, lots of little tiny kind of brushy bits like that. And then we've got one more to do. And we will then, there we go, pop them together. So you've got the kind of handle end where you haven't cut it, and then you've got the sort of feathery end all together. Now I'm going to just reach for my sellotape. Here we go, and I'm going to take those together. The fun bits coming up. Right, there we go. Now I can hold that at one end, and I've got this kind of flickery paintbrush that I've made. Now, here we go. I'm going to reach for some of my watery paint. Just give it a little stir there. I'm going to put my paintbrush to one side, and I'm going to see what happens. So there are a couple of different techniques. I'm going to get some paint on here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick with my wrist. I'm going to hold my hand kind of in the top of the box, and I'm going to flick like that in different directions. And you can see that the paint is making a really nice splatter. Now, another technique is you can use your hand. This is why you've got a kitchen roll at the ready, because you may need to wash your hands down. Using your finger, you can flick the little fronds that you've made onto the paper. Let's give that another go. Now, so far, all of my splatters are staying inside my box. But I'm just going to get my kitchen roll, keep my hands clean so you don't get in a complete mess.
Rhiannon, I'm completely engrossed with what you're doing there and want to try that out myself. It's interesting to watch you. So when you design a scene like this, scenery like this, do you do this painting yourself?
Well, right back when I first started out as a theatre designer, I did used to do my own scenic painting, but actually there are much more talented and much more expert people who do scenic painting as their job. And they use lots of these sorts of techniques. So it's actually, you're doing a kind of miniature version here. And I've got a few photographs I can show you of scenic painters in action. So here is Chelsea. You can see her there standing at the front of the stage. And actually what she's doing here is very similar to what we're having a go at. You can see she's kind of splattering paint down there, the kind of greens and blues, onto what looks like a sort of wooden floor kind of paint effect. So there is an example. And we've also got a picture of Frances Waddington here, who is a fantastic scenic painter. Now she is painting a backdrop. So whereas Chelsea was painting the floor, here's Frances painting a backdrop. And she's actually using quite a fine paintbrush there, but you can see what she's painting is kind of life-size. I mean, she's doing a huge painting. And then we've got another picture here, which is really exciting. This is Charlotte, and this is also scenic painting, I promise you. She is mixing some kind of texture. It might be sawdust or some kind of molding clay or something. She's mixing that into the paint in order to get this amazing effect. And this, I think, is for Hansel and Gretel, which is another Garsington production. But what is so exciting about scenic painting is that scenic painters will try out lots and lots of different methods. They'll use paintbrushes sometimes, but they'll often make their own brushes like we just did in order to create a specific effect. They might use sponges, they might use newspaper, or as you saw there with Charlotte, she's put something into the paint to kind of give it a really great texture. So we're going to have a go at another effect here. First of all, I'm just going to show you actually one of the things they often do, that scenic painters often do, is they get paint onto their paintbrush. I'm actually going to use my roll of tinfoil. They get something hard and they get a paintbrush loaded up with paint, and they hit the paintbrush. Oops, I am getting paint a little bit everywhere. They hit the paint off the paintbrush like that. I use some green, you might be able to see it a little bit more clearly. So by tapping the paintbrush onto this kind of solid surface, which I'm using my tinfoil roll, you can see how you can get a different, this is much blobbier, whereas our splatter brush did lovely little fine, much finer little sprays of paint. So that's another technique, which is really great. And then we're going to try one other little thing here. Now, I'm going to take a sort of little square there of tinfoil, and we're going to make a funnel. Because what I'm trying to do is work out if we can almost, in a controlled way, almost pour paint, like Jackson Pollock did. He would pour it sort of almost straight out of the paint can. So you're going to take a bit of tinfoil like this and fold it in half. Now here's where your kebab skewer comes in handy. Just pop that across the tinfoil. I hope you can see this clearly enough. Across the tinfoil, and you're going to roll up, keep your finger on one end. So this is the kind of end, this is the end of the little funnel, and you're going to roll it so there's a gap at the top here, but it's nice and tight round the bottom. So it's like a funnel. There we go. So I'll just keep rolling that up, and then so the kebab stick there is just ensuring that we're going to end up with a hole right at the bottom of our funnel. And I'll just get a little bit of tape and just straighten that out a bit and tape my funnel shut. There we go. So we've got an open, like an ice cream cone, I guess, but we know that there's a hole in the bottom because the kebab skewer is there. Now, I'm going to leave the kebab skewer in because that's going to effectively be a bit like a plug for a moment. And I'm going to take my watery blue paint. I'm going to pour it into my funnel. And then I'm going to release the kebab skewer, and very quickly I'm going to fling that around a little bit in the box. There we go. It's very action-packed today. That's why I'm standing up, not sitting down. I'm going to pop that down. So there we go. I'm also just going to do a little bit of wiggling of this around, just to let some of that watery paint drip around like that. So there we go. How's that looking?
Absolutely brilliant. And you've given us a real insight into all the techniques that go into something like this. And talking of design challenge, I know that the challenge here for stage management was the live painting on stage and the fact that costumes might get marked with the paint. And at the start of every show, of course, the costumes had to look the same. So they had to make sure that the paint was washable.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, that, trying to keep everything looking pristine every show. And as a designer, often you can come up with really great ideas and sometimes quite conceptual ideas, but often you've got to work really hard with your brilliant production managers and your costume team and everyone else in order to actually put that idea on stage. And I think, yeah, the live painting in this one was definitely one of those challenges.
And the production manager and stage management team also had to put grills in the stage so that the paint could actually go down and not remain on the stage. But actually, in reality, it did remain on stage a little bit and performers would have slipped. So the director had to choreograph in some mopping of the paint during the action, which is definitely a challenge, I would say, and something that they resolved to create this amazing effect. So thank you so much, Rhiannon, for showing us that.
So here's a little close-up there of the painting in the box. I'm going to leave it in the box just until it has really dried, because we've put quite a lot of water into that paint. But when it dries, then you can take it out, and you could even maybe work into it if you wanted to kind of enhance what you've done. But if not, you could even put it in a little frame. But I would particularly like you to take some photographs and send them to us so we can see how your action painting has gone.
Yes, do send them to us, and thank you so much, Rhiannon, for an inspiring design challenge. This week, we look forward to seeing you at 10 AM on Monday for our Don Giovanni motivation session. Thanks for watching and being with us today. Loved having you. Bye.